views expressed on this broadcast of Step by Step Towards Emotional Sobriety with Dr. Alan Berger do not necessarily reflect those of Take 12 Radio, KHLT Recovery Broadcasting, or our affiliates. Take 12 Radio and KHLT Recovery Broadcasting are not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship. And now, here's your host, Dr. Alan Berger, and the Monty'man.
Well, welcome aboard, friends and family, those of you in recovery, advocates of, and perhaps some of you who should be. Welcome to another fine episode of Step by Step Towards Emotional Sobriety with our friend, the Sultan of Swing, Dr. Alan Berger. Welcome, Dr. Berger.
Well, you have a new name for me every time I'm doing this show with you. Now I'm the Sultan of Swing.
Now you're the Sultan of Swing, man. That's just, you just, they say about it.
Some of the things I've been called in my life.
Well, there you go. We just got to make sure that we understand that the swing is not a mood swing, right?
See, look at how clever you are, right? And this show is all about emotional what?
Sobriety, the next frontier. And we're going to be talking about a smart thing number 8. Comfort yourself when you are hurt or are disappointed. But we have a special guest with us again this week, right?
Really do, Monty. At last show we had Bob Newton from the Hazelden Betty Ford Center. And this month we've got Mark Baumgartner joining us. He's the Inpatient Program Director. And as we've talked about on the show before, I've been coming out and doing some training for the staff, and Mark and I have really connected out here, and I really love the work he's doing and what's happening, and I'm really glad you're on the show with us tonight, Mark.
Thanks for having me, you guys. It's a privilege.
You bet, Mark. Now, you have, just to kind of qualify for the listeners, you have a master's in education from Stephen F. Austin State University. You have a BS in psychology. You worked for the Texas Youth Commission as a treatment specialist. What's a treatment specialist with the youth?
Well, the Texas Youth Commission is basically the youth prison system in Texas.
Got it.
And yeah, so I worked with folks who were working with kids in the state's custody, and the state of Texas was pretty invested in rehabilitating kids and getting them back to their families healthier than when they came in.
Mark, is Texas as hardcore as they say?
It depends what you're talking about.
When you're talking about law enforcement and corrections?
I don't think it's as bad as Arizona.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, pitch your tent here. This is where you're going to stay, buddy. Oh, man. Yeah.
Arizona's a wonderful state, and my heart's always going to be in Texas. I'm a lifelong Texas Longhorn fan, so now that I've alienated myself in Oregon with all the Beaver side.
Yeah. Oh, we just lost your guys' mic. Hold on a second. It's back. Okay, we're working. Yeah, well, that's okay. I happen to like. I'm a graphic artist. Before I was ever a broadcaster, and I happen to like football teams based on their logos and their graphics. And so I have several T-shirts that have Texas Longhorns because I like the graphics. So there you go. There's the extent of my sports fanship. Well, Mark, welcome to Step by Step Towards Emotional Sobriety. Thank you for taking some time to join us on the show.
It's a privilege. I'm glad to be here.
So Doc, go ahead, Dr. Berger.
Mark has been a part of the training I've been doing out here, and we've spent some time talking about emotional sobriety. So I thought it might be good to open the show and ask Mark to share a little bit about how he sees that in terms of how critical it is in terms of working with some of the patients, in terms of helping them develop some stable recovery.
Yeah, I mean, my most recent exposure to this idea of emotional sobriety came from Dr. Berger, and he was presenting a letter that Bill W. wrote that's in a 1958 Grapevine, where Bill talked about emotional sobriety. And I just love the maturity that Bill conveys in that letter, where he talks about old-timers getting to a place of kind of hitting a bottom by having these youthful, unrealistic expectations about be it romance or success or just their place in the world, and how getting to a place.
Mark, hold on a second. I'm losing you again. Hold on a minute. We seem to have a short in my cable here. Okay, go ahead. Can you repeat what you just said?
Well, I was just Dr. Berger introduced me and the staff I work with as part of a presentation on emotional sobriety to a letter Bill W. wrote that got published in a 1958 Grapevine. That's just an amazing thing to read. You can find it on the internet pretty quick if you do a search on emotional sobriety. But anyway, the idea in the letter of these old-timers, including Bill W. and AA, kind of getting to a place of despair and depression, having had unrealistic expectations about approval or their functioning in the world that was unrealistic, and then kind of getting recentered with having realistic expectations was something I thought was pretty powerful and I identified with, especially since on my fifth step, when I kind of looked at causes and conditions after analyzing things, every resentment I had was based on unrealistic expectations of myself or others. So that just resonated with me. And in terms of working with patients, setting them up with this idea that life on life's terms doesn't mean that everything goes the way I want all the time. I know it sounds simple and immature to think otherwise, but it's easy to get into that trap of thinking that way.
Mark, why do you think, or do you think, that we kind of got off track? We my personal experience within the 12-step rooms was, even through the step process, working with a sponsor, really with my nose in the book and the whole 9 yards, not being meeting dependent, but actually focusing on doing the work. Even then, it wasn't until much later before I ever heard anything about emotional sobriety. Why is that?
I don't know. I think working the steps, and in particular the fourth and fifth brings some of that because of the awareness that comes from it. But one thought is maybe because things seem to typically, for many of us, get so much better initially just by putting the booze down and having people to connect with and getting a sense of meaning back into our lives, new in recovery, that maybe after a period of time, as life unfolds on life's terms with the normal disappointments and that occur, that we have to get humble again with when things don't go our way or whatever, and it's easy to forget that things aren't going to always go our way, which kind of brings us back to the topic: how do we self-soothe when that happens?
Yeah,
it's so true, Mark. It really does bring you back to that, and this is such an important discussion tonight, Monty, because it's at the heart of this emotional sobriety, as our ability to maintain our balance, or if we're knocked off balance, to recover it. And, there's nothing that knocks you off balance as much as if you get hurt or disappointed. And that's a real challenge, and you start to think about it, well, where did we learn? How did we learn to deal with our being hurt or disappointed? And it goes way back in our lives. I mean, it was very interesting that when I became a father, I was talking to my sponsor, Tom, about it. And he said, "Hey, Al, did you ever pay attention to how long you can stand your daughter crying?" And I go, yeah, God, it's about 2 minutes, I think is science. And all of a sudden, I start to get anxious inside and uncomfortable, and I want to do something to stop her crying. He goes, I believe that that's the amount of time that our pain and disappointment was tolerated by our parents. And so it kind of grows off, this
wow.
kind of alarm clock goes off that says, now you've got to stop now. You've had 2 minutes, you've cried for 2 minutes, and now knock it off. It's time to quit whining about it, and now stop the tears. If you don't stop the tears, I'm really going to give you something to cry about it.
Oh, yeah.
And so we don't ever learn, we don't ever get any coaching from our parents in terms of how to really soothe ourselves. And, Mark, you wanted to say something about that, huh?
No, I was just identifying with the 2 minute thing and
right?
being the parent in the thing and how easy it is not to tolerate much more than that.
Yeah, it's really interesting how that goes off. So the first thing that I want our listeners to really become aware of, Monty, is that their ability to soothe themselves and to really stay with themselves when they're disappointed or hurt has to do with how much that was tolerated when they were young. And it becomes a somatic experience. It really does. It's in your body. And you can really feel when you hit that point when now you're supposed to be over it. But nobody ever tells us how to get over it. You're told, stop crying.
Oh, yeah, just get over it, but no one tells you how.
Yeah, just get over it. And you know how we got over it? We shut ourselves down.
Yeah.
We had to desensitize ourselves. We had to cut ourselves off from what we're feeling. But do you think that really does it? Does that take it away? No, it just stops it. It just pushes it in the background. But there's nothing resolved. We don't learn anything from the experience we're having. In fact, we're told to stop having the experience that we're having. And so we start to develop this weird relationship with ourselves where we don't even know how to be with ourselves and to be present with ourselves.
It's real shaming. It's real shaming, to say, and, siblings do this all the time. They tell the younger sibling, oh, that didn't hurt. That isn't a big deal. When to the sibling it is. Parents have said it to their children, right? And it's all shame-based.
Yeah, it's all shame-based. And you when I've been shamed to control me, and when I shame myself to control myself, I'm not really comforting myself. I'm really being toxic towards myself. I'm either erasing myself, criticizing myself, faulting myself, blaming myself, all these things that really don't help me, deal with the pain and the hurt that I'm feeling. So at the heart of this emotional sobriety, as we've talked to our listeners about a lot, is the ability to regulate yourself, to soothe yourself, as Mark mentioned a minute ago. And it becomes quite a challenge because none of us have really learned how to do that. And what did we do? We turned to alcohol and other drugs as a way of dealing with our feelings.
Yeah.
And we relied on that to do that, and to regulate ourselves. And when you regulate yourself with drugs, you never can get really well regulated because the nature of the drugs themselves are going to dysregulate you.
Yeah, because they come with their own set of problems as well. So thus is the difference between medicating versus comforting.
You got it. I mean, there's a big difference, and there's really three things that need to happen. We need to learn how to stand with ourselves. I use the term a lot, how to support ourselves. We also need to learn how to soothe ourselves, and we need to learn how to have compassion for ourselves and what we see when we stop our self-deception, when we really look at ourselves honestly. How can we face ourselves without putting ourselves down or criticizing ourselves or judging ourselves? So if somehow we can start to develop in these three different areas, then we can start to learn how to comfort ourselves. And that, I'm going to stop a minute. I'll make you Mark a chance to comment on this, and I want to give you a couple of clinical examples. And I know at some point we'll need to take a break, but let's hear from Mark a little bit on it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about the coin, the medallion to thine own self be true, and then the question becomes, well, how? Well, work the steps. Okay, but what happens when I work the steps? Well, if I really work the steps, and I'm doing the inventory work and how it works, and looking at my resentments and fears, and what my part is and what was not my part, I'm going to probably get some increased objectivity working with my sponsor on what's my stuff and what's other people's stuff, such that I'm going to be able to stand with myself, soothe myself, and then have compassion for myself. And being able to, I don't know, maybe that's the power of another alcoholic talking to another alcoholic in terms of getting some relief. If I have to stay in my head with all these ideas, especially old ones, which were shame-based from my parents, even
right.
if they did what they could, then, or other people when I was powerless as a kid, then if I have to stand with that stuff and don't get any relief, I'm gonna have a hard time standing with myself. But when I got somebody else who's willing to stand with me and listen and accept, then somehow I get the power to do the same with myself, and then I can be with others. So I guess that's the magic of the program.
The way you said it, Mark, is so powerful, because learn how to relate to ourselves differently when someone relates to us differently. It's really what you're saying, when someone can take the time and really say, look, it's the pain you're in is the pain you're in, and I'm going to just stay with you while you're in this pain. I mean, think about that. How many times have people really said that to you and were willing to stay with you in that state of mind? I know for me, when my sponsor did it with me, man, and I have a close friend, Roger, I was going through a real tough time about 10 years ago, and he would sit with me, and sometimes I would cry for 45 minutes with this guy.
Wow.
I was in so much pain, and not once did I ever get the feeling is not off. I mean, he was so accepting of where I was at and willing to sit with me in this raw, naked, dark place when I had a hard time staying with myself in it. And that's what we do, man. We really do learn how to treat ourselves different when we have somebody. I call that person that Mark is talking about, Monty, an enlightened witness in your life.
Oh, boy, that's a great term. Now, let me ask you something, Dr. Berger. That person that helped you through that person had gone through the steps, had learned how to apply and implement them in their life, right?
Well, my sponsor, Tom, did. This other fellow I was talking about is Roger Andes, and dear friend of mine. I met him in graduate school, and Roger is not one of us.
Okay.
But he's a brilliant therapist and even a better friend.
But he was well qualified to do that. My point is,
yeah, really well. But it's his nature too.
Okay.
Well, what I say is that a lot of people that are therapists aren't necessarily great therapists.
Well, no, that's very true. Let me.
It's a certain kind of person, Monty, doesn't it? I mean,
it does.
I think Roger was that way, whether he would be a therapist or not.
Well, let me say this though, and and we share in this frustration, and this is something that sometimes I think it's getting better, sometimes I think it's not. Sometimes I don't know what to think. And that is, and let me say this to Mark as well, we're talking about a process that, left to our own devices, we don't do very well, especially when we don't know how to, because you guys both mentioned, people tell us to straighten up and apply right, just get over it or whatever, but then they don't tell us how to. If there are not people in our lives that have been through this, that have had to quote a phrase, a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps, or have got the personality and the giftings like your friend had, that have the abilities and the experience to help us, then we're being taught by people that don't know what they're doing, and we have within our 12 steps fellowships, not the program, but the fellowships, so many folks that are just going by platitudes and meetings and the fellowship and not really the program, and they're becoming old-timers, and they're teaching people stuff that isn't working because they're not doing what was laid out that worked so well before. And it's very disheartening, is it not?
But, everything you're saying makes sense, and I've seen it and experienced it to a certain degree. But that's the beauty of the program is if I'm interacting with a sponsor who initially had something I wanted and was attractive for whatever reason, and in my relationship with that guy, I'm feeling like I'm getting the message there's something wrong with me a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I need to relook at if I really want what that sponsor is delivering. Is that, somebody similar to somebody that wasn't so good for me earlier in my life, or is this guy giving me a sense of increased self-acceptance and that ability to stand with myself and be compassionate by being compassionate with me? And I'm not talking about some pushover guy who doesn't have any direction, but somebody who has direction, who's committed and enthusiastic about bringing me through the steps, who practices it and, will call me out, but isn't necessarily, shaming in the process. I mean,
right.
Healthy shame too. If I'm acting shamelessly, hopefully somebody will say something.
Yeah.
Get to feel that, but there's winners and losers in the program, and you're right though. There's people that are kind of fluff and buff, and get a lot of time put together, and that's really what they got to offer. Is they got a lot of time, but not a lot of peace.
The good news is there's still a lot of people out there that are doing the deal the way it was laid out, and if you'll just give it a chance and not walk out of a meeting just because you haven't had that wonderful experience in your first 30 days, you will probably find somebody that can walk you through this stuff, right? Right, Dr. Berger? Don't you think so?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what we're talking about is we're really the blind leading the blind here.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of us that have had this experience that know how to help, and so we're kind of all fumbling at this and trying to figure it out together. And sometimes, like my buddy's a few steps ahead of me, and he's able to pull me forward, then I can pass that on. And, that's kind of how we all, evolve in this program, is it's, one drunk helping another drunk take that next step. And then when we take that next step, we're able to stick out our hand and help that next guy take that next step. And so, we're all in that process, right, of becoming who we can be and becoming healthier and really trying to learn how to deal with some of these things that we've never dealt with. And, I know we got a break coming up, and after the break I want to talk about a few clinical examples of this.
Awesome.
And people discovered in terms of how to comfort themselves when they're hurt.
Let's do that. Folks, don't go away. More with Dr. Alan Berger and Mark Baumgartner when we return.
I had this illness that really made me powerless over alcohol and that insisted that I got drunk. And so I got drunk. It doesn't have anything to do with trying to control it. An alcoholic who picks up the first drink will pick up the second drink. I can't say to anyone, no, don't drink. But I can say that when you decide you don't want to drink, come to AA. The door to AA is always open. Alcoholics Anonymous. It works. Look us up. Check your phone book, newspaper, or AA.org.
Hey there, this is the Monty'man from Take 12 Recovery Radio. Many of us have attended all sorts of addiction symposiums and treatment conventions, and so much of the time we walk away from these events feeling like we've been preaching to the choir just one more time. May I suggest a different kind of substance abuse and addiction treatment event? The Evolution of Addiction Treatment Conference, February 5th through the 8th, 2015, at the Westin Los Angeles Airport Hotel and Convention Center. The current field of substance abuse and addiction treatment has been evolving for almost 8 decades now, and during this time we have seen many important developments as well as many failed experiments. It seems time to step back and conduct a professional inventory of where we have been, where we are now, and where we are heading. Well, this conference will provide a forum that encourages professional dialogues of controversial issues, showcases innovative and creative treatment approaches, and offers an overview of the field and its future. For more information, visit www.theevolutionofaddictiontreatment.com. Join me and many of my guests as we attend the Evolution of Addiction Treatment Conference February 5th through the 8th at the Westin Los Angeles Airport Hotel and Convention Center, 2015. All right, welcome back to Step by Step Towards Emotional Sobriety with Dr. Alan Berger and our special guest, Mark Baumgartner, and he is the director of Inpatient Services, part of the clinical directing staff at Hazelden Betty Ford Center. And we've been talking about comforting ourselves when we're hurt or disappointed. And Dr. Berger, you were going to give us some clinical examples.
Well, yeah, I want to talk about a situation in that this woman, she was dating another person in the program, and, that can be a challenging thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes date someone else in the program, and she had long-term recovery at the point. I mean, she was probably at least between 15 and 20 years into her recovery at that point in time. And he was also a long-termer, right? I mean, he was probably at 20, 25 years. And it was one of these situations where she was crazy about him. She really loved him. She wanted to spend as much time with him as she could. And he was into the relationship and then not into the relationship. So he was kind of here today, gone tomorrow kind of guy.
Oh,
right?
boy. Yeah.
So when he was there, they had a great time, but they would go 3-4 days. He wouldn't call her. She wouldn't hear from him. She tried to reach him, and then all of a sudden, out of blue, he'd contact her again. And these periods of time when he wasn't in contact with her, well, threw her for a loop. I mean, she'd be sitting in my office and just in a tremendous amount of pain. God, what am I doing? I'm crazy about this guy, but I don't want to be in this relationship, but I can't let go. And, I mean, she was really suffering, Monty.
Wow.
Of her, worried that she was just being used and that she was a booty call. And then there were other times when they'd get together, she could really see that the relationship was much more than that. But she was torn, man. She was in a lot of conflict, in a lot of pain. It wasn't unfolding in the way that she had hoped it would, right? In the way that she would have liked the relationship to unfold.
Sure.
And it was really interesting. Is she's sitting there in this pain, and she didn't want to drink again. She was very much committed to her recovery. I saw her rocking.
Oh.
Just very, very subtly, as she's talking to me and tears are coming down her eyes, I see her sitting there, and there's this rocking motion going on in her body. So I said, listen, I don't want you to stop this because I don't want to make you self-conscious, but I want you to pay attention to this rocking that's going on and see if you could just follow that for a minute, see where that wants to take you. And what happened is she started to rock even more. And as she rocked, she cried more. But it was a different kind of a crying. It was like a deeper crying. It was more of a healing crying that started to take place. And what turned out of this whole process is her body knew exactly what she needed to do to comfort herself. But she was not using her awareness of what was going on with her to pay attention to what her body was telling her that she needed to do. As well as, I'm sure that a part of this was, I'm an adult and I shouldn't be sitting here rocking.
Oh,
Crazy
yeah.
people rock themselves, right? I mean,
Right.
Things like that. So she had these rules, too, that prevented her from really following, this very, very natural movement that would have comforted her. Well, we just started to explore that in the session. We experimented with it, and she started to do it. And the effects were immediate. They were very powerful. And you know what she did? She bought a rocking chair.
Hey, wow!
The next night after this session, she went home. She put a rocking chair, and now when she would be in these states, instead of struggling with it, she'd put herself in the rocking chair, get herself a good handkerchief, and she would just support herself and let herself cry, and she would rock herself and soothe herself. Now, what happened after about 6 months of this? The relationship, she stopped it. She says, I don't want to go through this anymore. I've given it a chance. This is not what I want in my life, and she was able to move on. But she didn't run away from the pain. And see, that's the message that I want our listeners to get, Monty, is that none of us that are in recovery have done well in terms of being able to stay with our pain and confront ourselves and to just feel bad. That we think if we're feeling bad, we've got to run away from it, we got to avoid it, we got to medicate it, we got to change how we're feeling. And God, wouldn't it be a novel concept, instead of trying to change it, we just stayed with it? That we just tried to sit with our pain and see where it's going to lead us and what it has to tell us. Because there's a lot of important information in our experience, but only if we can apply our awareness to what is happening and to stay with what is happening. And look, not many of us have learned how to do that.
Right.
That's where we ended up, where we ended up.
Yeah.
Because we were avoiding ourselves in so many different ways.
Wow, that's powerful stuff. When you talk about these things, every once in a while I will reflect as you're talking about something in my youth. But it was in the year 2001 when my father passed away from a very, very painful bout of peripheral T-cell lymphoma. And I'll never forget this. And I remember it, and it's a good thing I remember it. My mother, as she called me up, she said, Dad has passed. I went over to their apartment, and the hospice was there, and the coroner was there, and they put Dad in a body bag, and they wheeled him out the door. I had never witnessed anything like that before. And as I began to show outwardly my emotions, my mother turned to me and said to me, she said, now don't you cry. Don't you do that. Don't you dare do that.
There it is, man.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've never forgotten that. Now that was very wounding at the time. But I was able to learn from that and especially and vow to never say that to my children. But man, lots of people, that's the kind of things they're hearing all day long. That's
right, man.
I had a similar experience a few years ago. My mom passed too young, and it was an illness where she was in pain for 3 months. So there was one aspect of relief, but
right.
There wasn't going to be a viewing at the funeral, and I flew into town. And so what we did is we put together 4 or 5 poster boards with collages of pictures through our through her life, and certainly my life with her was on there. And as I reviewed, I just remember sitting in the living room looking at this collage the evening before the funeral, and just allowing this pain to come up and out. It was like I was throwing up.
Yeah.
It was just this waves of gut-wrenching pain. And it was weird because I was, even though I was by myself, because I hear, a lot of times when you're doing grief, you should have a witness, but I knew I was healing at one level as I allowed the pain to come up. That's the flip side of feeling the pain is we get the gift of healing. And then the next day at the funeral, it was a full house, but there weren't a lot of people speaking when that opportunity came up. And I thought, gosh darn it, if I can stand up and speak in front of folks at an AA meeting, I'm sure as heck going to get up and talk about my mom. And I could barely get a word out. I was so choked up. But I remember sitting down, and my dad said, that took a lot of courage, because I'm the only one in my family who did it. But it was because I was willing, to be present with that pain, and I'm so grateful that that's how it turned out, that I was able to do that day. So I completely identify with your story there.
Yeah. Wow.
That's the thing, Monty, is the same thing, is that it's a very natural thing, and it's part of how we heal ourselves, is to cry when we're upset.
Yeah.
And there's different kinds of crying. See, when we're crying for the right reason, is because we're in pain and we just need to stay with it and heal that pain, then we don't need to be comforted. So this is a strange idea, but the crying is the comforting. Is when you're crying to cry, you're comforting yourself. When you cry to get somebody to comfort you, it's a different kind of crying. It's a manipulative crying.
Oh, boy.
So when I cry to get Mark to come over and to pay attention to me, I'm not crying to comfort myself. I'm crying to get him to do something for me that I'm not doing for myself. And so this is where it gets kind of confusing, because we've learned to use our emotions to try to hook other people in. That's the word Bill Wilson talked about. Hook other people in to do for us what we're not able to do for ourselves.
Yeah.
And look, this is the thing we've been talking about over and over again, is our emotional dependency, right? Now,
right.
Emotional dependency hooks in. So if I'm crying for myself and Mark comes over to hug me while I'm crying, my experience is going to be, Mark, I'm not able to comfort you right now, and you're wanting to comfort me because I just need to stay with my pain. I don't need him to do that.
Right.
Nice. Sits there with me, and takes care of himself. That might be something I'd like, but I don't need him to do anything because I'm doing what I need to do.
So let me ask you this. So sometimes when a person is weeping and they get up and they move to another room and go shut the door, it might be a really wise thing not to follow them, right?
Exactly. They just may need to go and do that. Now, if that's your partner, and you start to feel anxious about them going to do that, and now you've got to sit and comfort yourself and to repair yourself so that you're not trying to control them to stop them from feeling what they're feeling, because you feel it's bringing up something for you that makes you uncomfortable or makes you anxious.
So don't be offended if the person says, "No, I need to be alone." Don't take that wrong, because that's probably the way they're dealing with it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. That's a really, really, really good point.
And it's a very subtle point that nobody really attends to or talks much about, but it's when I am experiencing what I need to experience, it's the experience of it that is healing. It's not what somebody else is doing for me. Now, look, in it, if there was a point in this where I said, look, I'm having a little trouble supporting myself, and I could turn to Mark and say, hey, Mark, are you available to talk to me about this? That's taking care of myself, too. You follow me?
Right, yes.
Say to him, hey, I need that. But let's say I'm in a relationship with him and I don't say that and I expect him to figure it out. See, this is where that emotional dependency comes in. Now I'm expecting him to just respond to me because, God, if he cared, of course he would do that. But you see, it's a game I'm playing because I don't want to be vulnerable and ask for what I want, because he might say, I can see you're in trouble, but I've got my own stuff going on right now I got to deal with.
Yeah, and you know what?
Take the risk.
Guys,
be vulnerable.
Guys accuse women of this all the time, but we do it too. We expect people to read our minds too.
Totally.
Yeah, and one thing Dr. Berger said once that's really resonated with me is, in relationships, if there's too many rules, there's not enough room for people.
That's good.
We always got all these unwritten rules about how things are supposed to go. This is okay, that's not okay. But when there's too many rules, there's not enough room for people. And
so it's so true. Mark, we've talked about this a lot. It was interesting. I was doing a session with a couple the other day on the phone. They're down in Texas, and she wants to marry this guy. She's crazy about him. But she's concerned that he doesn't have the same kind of a commitment she has to marriage. And the rule she has is that when you get married, you got to stay married no matter what happens, and it has to be a commitment for life. You know, it's through sickness and health and all that stuff, all the old vows, right? The marital vows
Right.
that we still hear a lot of people have. And so, you know, I was interested, as we were talking about it, I said, look, you know, there's something interesting to me in this, is that you're saying that you want him to have it, and I'm wondering if you're aware at all that you don't have that.
Ha ha, good point.
She goes, well, what do you mean I don't have it? Of course I have it. It's very important to me. I says, well, look, recently he was away for a long extended trip out of the country, and while he's gone, you're sitting over here on this end of it saying, I'm not sure I want to be with you because you're not here.
Ah.
I don't know if I can marry a guy that has to have these travels in his work and stuff like that. And I said, so here you are expecting him to have this kind of a commitment, and you're saying that you have it. But in fact, when this was going down in a way and you were really lonely and stuff and it was difficult for him, you were questioning whether you wanted to stay in this relationship or not, or keep the engagement going.
Wow, that's a great observation.
Well, she couldn't see in herself because it was incongruent, right?
Right.
She can't see where she's not doing it. So when she's not able to do it, what does she need? Everybody else to do it because she doesn't know how to do it. So if you do it for me, then it's going to mask the fact that I've got a problem and I don't know how to do it.
Mm-hmm. It's like we project the worst fear about ourselves onto others and expect them to compensate for us.
Exactly. And we also project what we're worried that they're doing to us, we're doing to them, and we project that on them, and we don't see that we're doing it. And remember, we had that talk, that was a couple, shows ago, where we talked about you got to own your own projection.
Right.
Project all over the place. Now, I got to tell you, she didn't like me pointing this out to her.
Oh, no, of course not.
Oh, man, her face was, it was all scrunched up, and she had this look on her face. If I could get my hands around Dr. Berger's neck, I'd swing. But if she doesn't look at this, and if she doesn't start to confront that, and that's the other thing I was going to say here, is a part of comforting yourself and facing and dealing with the stuff you need to face. It's really creating a crucible of self-confrontation, and where you are willing to confront yourself and to look at the worst in you. And you've heard me say this many times, Monty, is that only the best in us can look at the worst in us. And so when you're looking at the worst in you, when you're admitting what a creep you are, when you're admitting that you're not doing what you're expecting other people to do, that's the best in you that's seeing that. There's nothing better in you than to be able to be that honest with you.
That's one of those other paradoxes in recovery, like surrender to win.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's totally that paradox.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And that in itself can be very comforting if we would just realize maybe the reason that I'm able to see how crappy and what a turd I've been in this situation is because I'm able to see it, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yep. And then, it's still there, but I can see it for what it is, and when I can't see it and I'm in denial, then it's running the show. And one of the other helpful things Alan has mentioned that I've tried to remember to apply for myself is, and this relates back to the stuff about relationship and being unrealistic on expectations of others when I'm not dealing with my own stuff, but is to insert myself into the situation. In other words, to sort of speak my truth, even though when I do that, I'm not necessarily going to have the message received very well. Instead of staying in fear about how I'm going to be, taken when I speak my truth. I guess that goes back to thine own self be true as well. So am I willing to, even though the result's going to be potentially conflict, am I willing to say the heck with it and throw it in there, and not in a abusive, alienating way to the other person, but just knowing it's not going to be popular to say it anyway, and take that risk. Does that make any sense, you guys?
A lot of sense.
Yeah, because if you don't, eventually it's going to end up coming out and bleeding all over somebody in an inappropriate manner at some point, won't it?
Yeah, I think it does, man. I definitely think that that's what happens, Lonnie. But you know what Mark is saying is that, you know, we got to pay attention to saying things for the right reason,
right?
Taking a position. So if I say things because I need to say it, see, I don't need a certain response from you. But if I say something and now I'm waiting for you to say something because of what I've said, well, now it turns out what I said was really a manipulation to get you to say something.
Yeah.
It's back to that thing. If I have emotional sobriety, then I do what I do because it's the right thing for me to do, not because I'm going to get something from it. I mean, you and I have this talk a lot.
Yeah.
It's very easy for us to lose sight of this. But I do what I do because it's the right thing to do. It's what's important for me to do. And so my doing it is the satisfaction. That is the completion of it for me. But if I do it to get something from you, to get your recognition, to get your validation, to get you to like me, whatever it is, then when you're not forthcoming with what I'm trying to manipulate you for, I get upset with you. And I say, what kind of a friend are you? Or whatever nonsense I'm into at that particular
time. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what Mark is bringing us back to is if we're going to stay centered, then when we hit that mark, then what we do is for ourselves, and we don't need anybody else to participate in any other way than they are. So if he had to walk out while I'm crying, he could walk out. And I would be okay with that, and I wouldn't have this rule like, my God, how could you walk out? Because then my crying was to keep him in the room. You see what I mean? By right reason, he can get up and walk out. He can even say he doesn't like my crying. And I can say, I'm sorry you're having trouble with it. I need to cry. Mm-hmm. So there can be room for him to have whatever reaction he has, and there's room for me, if I can hold on to my autonomy, for me to have whatever reaction. Now, my God, wouldn't it be great if we could be that mature?
Oh, boy. There's a phrase. I want to run this this statement by you guys. It's something I've come across as of late that has really been a gem when it comes to stopping and asking myself a question before I react. And this is how it goes. Before I act, if I will stop and ask myself, in light of my past experience, my current circumstance, and my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing for me to do? Not what is the right thing, not what is the fair thing, but what's the wise thing? And I got to tell you, I've used this along with things that I've learned, Mark, from Dr. Berger about emotional sobriety. And I have got to tell you that it is just amazing to me if we will just pause and learn not to live based on our knee-jerk reactions, how much healing we will experience in our lives.
Well, listen, even in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it encourages us to restrain tongue and pen.
Yeah.
Right? There's a phrase in the book that says, God, when you're upset, show restraint in terms of your tongue, what you say to people, and your pen. Now, that doesn't mean to just swallow it. That means just wait a minute, get balanced, and then see what you want to say about the situation. So, in no way are we talking about that we're going to just be these hallowed saints that walk around
right.
and are never bothered by anything. That's sure not me.
That's not me either.
Oh, I can be reactive and a pissy little baby, as my wife calls me at times. I still have that in me. But I'm less so today. I gain my balance quicker today than I've ever been able to do before. And most of the time, I'm not in that emotional turmoil that I used to be in all the time. And that's the gift of this program, that it really is a way of us on a daily basis, right, having the ability to balance ourselves out and to really, really have that emotional sobriety, which is what we're hoping that our listeners are going to get some from listening to us. Either that or we're just driving crazy, Mike.
Yeah.
What'd you say? I got to find my center of emotional insanity.
Yeah. I got to find my center of emotional insanity. That's right. Well, this is good. This is great stuff. Thanks, guys.
Great, Mark. It's been great having you on our show tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Mark.
A lot to you guys.
Yeah, this is fun. And Mark, you are you going to be at the conference in February at the Westin there in L.A.?
Absolutely, that's my plan.
Oh, that's great. It'll be great to meet you, man.
Our power has in mind, but hopefully that'll work together.
Yeah. Well, it'll be good. We'll all sit around and we can. Let me ask you. Let's see, Mark. I believe I saw your picture. You don't have a whole lot of hair left either, do you?
No.
Yeah.
It's pretty much gone.
Yeah. Well, we can all sit around and.
Not when I got sober, though.
Oh, there you go. We can sit around and look at each other's reflections, and
that one took some acceptance.
Oh, did it? Yeah. Well, yeah, it is what it is, I guess, whatever that's supposed to mean. But having little hair is really a very precious thing. I used to think having lots of hair was precious, but I like this. I like this style. Don't you, Dr. Berger?
Yeah, I sure do.
No maintenance, no hair, no hairstylist or barbershop.
That's right.
First, if you have a little, you maintain or shave it.
Yeah. Well, any closing remarks from either one of you on this topic tonight?
No. I just really want to encourage our listeners to learn how to stay with what they're experiencing, and to find some ways to listen to themselves, listen to their body. Even if they need to sit there and make sounds, it's okay. Make your sounds. There's this whole somatic experience in therapy, and it's really about making a certain sound, right, and staying with that sound and letting that resonate inside you. And I encourage a lot of my patients to do that when they're in their pain, is to just let the sounds come out. You see, we have all these ideas that we're supposed to be adults and not supposed to act that way. It's only what kids do. Mm-hmm. But as you know, Monty, I've got this little 15-month-old girl in my life, Maddie, my daughter, and she teaches me so much about, who we really are. And she's so beautiful because, my wife and I haven't screwed her up too much yet. She's able to be who she is. And if she cries or needs to cry about something and let us know that it bothers her, she does.
Yeah.
I mean, she's just so present to whatever it is that's going on with her, and she's so real about it. And, I'm not. I'm better than I was, but I don't do that. I'll stop myself from saying what I need at times, or I won't cry when I want to cry. And, I play all these games with myself, but these are all the things that we've got to learn. When I talk about recovery, Money, I say we're recovering our lost true self, man.
Yeah.
We are recovering that lost self that we have, man, that we've gotten so far away from.
Yeah. And you talk about your daughter quite often, and no wonder just about every major spiritual teacher in the world refers to becoming childlike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. Well, guys.
That's a great point, man.
Thank you.
All right, Monty, I love you. Great show again, Mark. Great having
Monty.
You on the show.
Thanks, Alan. Appreciate it.
Thanks, you guys. It's been very, very beneficial. Well, folks, you can visit Dr. Berger's website at abphd.com. You can email him as well at abphd@msn.com, and you can click on the links here if you forget all that on the under workshops at take12radio.com. Under workshops at the top left, you're going to see a list, and one of them is going to be step by step towards emotional sobriety, as we present a different show once a month now on a monthly basis. with Dr. Alan Berger. A special thank you to our special guest, Mark Baumgartner of the Hazelden Betty Ford Center. Remember, my friends, do something now that will make the person you will be tomorrow proud to have been the person you are today. Until our next broadcast, this is the Monty'man, along with Mark and Dr. Alan Berger, and we're wishing God's perfect serenity for you. Bye-bye now.
This has been a broadcast of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.